It's time that we ranked anti-domain techniques in JJK. More specifically, I want to rank techniques like Fallen Blossom Motion, Simple Domain, and a couple others. That being said, like any other video, we have to go over some key factors on why an anti-domain technique is necessary within JJK. So we have to go over factors such as what is a domain expansion, what anti-domain techniques are out there, and most importantly, which is the strongest. But before we get into any of that, I need a favor from you guys. As always, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the noti bell because you know my reasons, okay? We like to talk in the comments. We love the algorithm, not really, but we're working on it. And also, I post a lot, so might as well hit the noti bell so you don't, miss a single video. Thank you. And without further ado, let's get into anti-domain techniques ranked and explained. Starting off our video with domain expansions, because to talk about an anti-domain technique, more importantly, to really rank anything, you need to set up what it is and why it's important. And an anti-domain technique is only important if it's going up against a domain expansion for the most part. So that being said, let's talk about a domain expansion for a short period of time. So a domain expansion is your innate domain manifested within a barrier. So the first thing that is going to happen is that a barrier is going to be created between you and your opponent. When I say between, I mean like you two are in it, not that it's blocking the path between one another. Let's use Gojo for example. So Gojo's curse technique is the Limitless, right? It makes it that he has basically control over atomic matter at the end of the day. Really, that's what it does. So Gojo is able to control gravity. He's able to control the atoms in your body. He's able to do a whole bunch of stuff using cursed energy, right? The Limitless allows him to do this. The Six Eyes allows him to control the Limitless. However, inside of his domain expansion, he is using the Limitless to pump your brain with information instead of just basically atomizing you. So once you are inside of Gojo's domain expansion, known as either Unlimited Void or Infinite Void, you are now being subjugated to his curse technique. It is sure to hit. And that is why domain expansion is so important. Not only is it a barrier trapping your opponent and also manifesting your innate domain and also imbued with your curse technique, but it is always sure to hit. And because of this, it is known as the pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery. That's right, there's nothing greater than a domain expansion when it comes to Jujutsu. The next best thing is a maximum technique. That being said, anti-domain techniques were created to counter these domain expansions. Now, these anti-domain techniques are not sure to prevent your death. However, it either lessens the damage that you would take or it prevents the sure hit from happening altogether. So they are beneficial to you surviving inside a domain expansion. But always know, people, that the best counter to a domain is using your own domain expansion. Contrary to popular belief, there are 4 anti-domain techniques. That's right. A lot of people say there's only 3 of them. 4 if you kind of count Simple Domain being separate from New Shadow Style Simple Domain. But realistically, in my eyes, there are 4 solid anti-domain techniques. 3 have been shown to actually be used against a domain expansion. 1 has not, but in my eyes, there's no reason why it would not work in the same capacity. That being said, coming in at number 4, we have Esoteric Technique, Hollow Wicker Basket. Now, we have only seen incarnated sorcerers use this technique, so we know that this is an old school technique to prevent domain expansions from having their sure hit effect. And we have seen Reggie and Sukuna, both incarnated sorcerers, use this technique. Now, this technique has it that the user grabs their hands, interlocks their fingers, and either sticks their hand out or keep it in, but either way, it basically is the hand sign to create this cursed energy barrier around yourself. Now, this technique does create a spear of cursed energy around you, which is beneficial for you because it nullifies the sure hit effect of the cursed technique imbued in the domain expansion. However, to keep it at maximum capacity, like to keep the output of your hollow wicker basket at maximum capacity, you have to keep your hands interlocked, which keeps your hands busy, which is not advantageous when you're entering combat inside a domain expansion, especially if the sure hit effect is turned off, right? So you could remove your hands from the interlock position and maintain hollow wicker basket, but then it's not at full capacity and power, and thus you could start incurring damage in the domain expansion. Now, there are some weaknesses to this technique. It does not work against an incomplete domain, which makes me think it might not work against an open domain, but also it doesn't work against a non-lethal domain. So something like Limitless or Infinite Void, it wouldn't work against that. To top it all off, it does not neutralize the curse technique imbued in the domain expansion, meaning it does neutralize the sure hit effect, but that curse technique is very much still out there and can still be used by the opponent. So that's why it doesn't nullify a non-lethal domain expansion. Moving on to number 3 is one that anime onis have already seen. It's not simple domain, it is actually Fallen Blossom Emotion. This is a secret art technique passed down in the big 3 families, them being the Gojo, the Kamo, and the Zenin family, of course. This technique covers the user in cursed energy, making it that it instantaneously reacts to any cursed energy it feels. So if I'm being attacked by a dismantle and I'm using Fallen Blossom Emotion, my cursed energy will strike that dismantle the second it touches my cursed energy, causing that technique to either weaken or be taken out altogether depending on output. Now, this technique can be used both offensively and defensively, right? So the offensive version, if you have a weapon, you can shroud your weapon in your cursed energy, and the same thing happens if your cursed energy hits something that has cursed energy, your weapon will immediately be drawn automatically to strike this object, right? So it kind of helps you out in battle as well, because if you are striking an opponent in front of you and somebody behind you is striking you and their weapon gets close enough where it comes into contact with your cursed energy, then you now can just turn right around automatically and strike them. Just extremely advantageous to you because you just turned around and took care of an opponent that you didn't even know was there. So that's a plus right there and then. Now, we have seen this used in both capacities, defensively in the domain expansion by Naobito Zenin and Satoru Gojo, and offensively by OG Zenin, which is Maki's father. Now, the biggest weakness when it comes to this technique that isn't so much of a weakness to the other technique, Hollow Wicker Basket, is the fact that you physically can't attack the opponent while maintaining the stance, and you have to maintain the stance in order to use this technique, unless, of course, you are using it in an offensive capacity. But you're mainly, offensively, you're mainly waiting for something to come into contact with you in order to strike it. So it's not so much like you're actively engaging the opponent. It's more so that you're activating it when you're waiting for the opponent in front of you to strike you, and it just so happens that somebody behind you is attacking you at the exact same time. A little bit better than Hollow Wicker Basket in my eyes, but if you want to interchange the two, honestly, I can't argue any other reason why you couldn't. Next up, we have number 2 spot, one of the most well-known techniques in all of JJK, probably the most well-known technique in all of JJK, at least to all the fans out there that are anime only, and it is the new Shadow Style School's Simple Domain. Now, for everybody out there who is saying this should be number 1, I get it. You could put it at number 1 on your list, but it's not coming in number 1 on my list. Sorry, that's not changing. And the reason for it is because I find that the next entry on this list is far more impressive. Even though it hasn't been used in a domain clash, it's because it doesn't have to be used in a domain clash. But in theory, it works the exact same way as any of the other anti-domain techniques do. For example, our last entry, Fallen Blossom Emotion, does not have to be used against a domain expansion because it has an offensive capacity, right? So, in theory, the next entry on this list does the same thing, right? But we're not there yet. Let's talk about Simple Domain. Let's reel it in real quick, talk about Simple Domain, and then we'll get on to the next one because I gotta fight about the next one. Now, Simple Domain, the new Shadow Style School's Simple Domain, you have to enter a binding contract in order to have it if you're not everybody else in the cast who just watches it be done and then now you can do it. Now, see, this technique was founded during the Han era, which is very impressive because the Han era is when Sukuna was around and everybody else was around. So domain expansions were happening nonstop. So that's why you had to implement a domain for the week, as simple domain is referred to. So it's very impressive that whoever used this, which the creator of it I have right here, I have to actually read it because I don't want to obliterate his name. And sorry if I do obliterate it. It is Sadasuna Hashiya. Ashiya. Sarasta Ashiya. Sarasta Ashiya, during the Han era, created this technique and was able to survive domain clashes, more than likely using the domain for the week. Just like its predecessor in Fallen Blossom Motion, Simple Domain is able to be used in offensive capacity with a weapon if you would like to do so, just like Miwa uses it, and also Kusekabe uses it in multiple different ways. But that's neither here nor there. The way it can help you out in a domain expansion is the fact that this technique allows you to disrupt the barrier itself. Not the curse technique, but the barrier, dissolving the sure hit effect. Now, somebody who is able to create a very powerful barrier like Kenjaku or Tengen or anybody who is very good at barrier techniques will cause your simple domain to add up to nothing. That's right. If you are a very talented barrier user, then chances of your simple domain surviving is slim to none. Because you, being the person using the barrier and not the person casting simple domain, will be able to execute the simple domain like that, because it's not a domain clash, for example. It is just you trying to disrupt a little portion of the barrier, not the entirety, but just a small portion of it. And so if I'm using simple domain, right, and you have the barrier, and I'm just trying to keep this small circle from having any type of structure, right, you can just say, oh, I just have to focus my energy right there, and then his simple domain will evaporate. And that's basically what happens to people who have simple domains open in somebody else's barrier, which is way stronger than theirs, and it does not go well for them. So you could combo your simple domain with a binding vow, and that will help you, right? But it still only buys you so much time. And that's at the end of the day what anti-domain technique does. It buys you time. Now, our other entry does not buy you time. It actually presses the offense on the opponent. So let's talk about that one, shall we? Also, I might as well go through the list since I've said everybody else who's used the other anti-domain techniques. I might as well go through the list of everybody who can use simple domain. So everybody who can use simple domain, and mind you, not everybody on this list has a binding vow with the new shadow style school. So it's hilarious to me how the binding vow sucks you of your lifespan. And that's what you get for simple domain. Like, that's the trade-off, which is crazy. But anyways, Miwa can use it. Kuchisake Onana can use it, which is the curse spirit that Gato summoned versus Toji that put him in a simple domain. Kokichi Muta, which is Mekamaru's master. Wiwi can use it. Pretty sure I obliterated that name, but it's Meimei's brother. Kozakabe can use it. Todo can use it. Incarnate Sorcerer from the Colon games, Rokushiyu can use it. Yuki can use it. Gojo can use it. Ino can use it. Choso can also use it. And lastly, Itadori learns it. So yeah, everybody basically has simple domain by the end of the story at the very least. Now, number one on this list of anti-domain techniques is the domain technique that can be used but has not been used in a domain expansion. So it is anti-domain technique, domain amplification. And I get it, a lot of people already know. If you follow me, you know how much I ride for domain amplification, but it's truly the best anti-domain technique. All right, so talking about the points real quick. Number one is going to be Kenjaku teaching this technique to both Hanami and Jogo and Sukuna. He actually taught this technique to Sukuna as well, because Kenjaku potentially created this technique. We don't know for sure. It's a little bit of my headcanon, but Kenjaku probably did create this because he's been around for about 1200 years. Now, that being said, Jogo and Hanami were exercised during Shibuya, but they did not need to use domain amplification in a domain clash because they needed it to nullify the curse technique from Satoru Gojo, that being the Limitless, of course, but they never needed it in an actual domain clash because they have domain expansions, and also you need a domain expansion in order to use this, where you don't need one to use the other anti-domain techniques, which, depending on how you view it, might be a point up or point down on on domain amplification. But understand this, domain amplification, what it does is it covers you, it shrouds you in your actual domain, and it does not imbue your curse technique into it. That being said, you can't use your curse technique, But if your opponent tries to use their curse technique, it drags that curse technique into your shrouded domain. So it is absorbing the application of that curse technique. Now, depending on the output, like anything, it may not absorb the full blunt of that curse technique. Like if Satoru Gojo is hitting you with a hollow purple and you're using domain amplification, chances are you're not going to avoid the full blunt of that hollow purple. I mean, Sukuna didn't, for God's sakes, but it did allow him to survive, so maybe you would too. That being said, Sukuna is the third person who learned this technique, and he has potentially the second or first strongest domain expansion in the entire show. So tell me why he would need to do it in a domain clash? Like, the people who are learning domain amplification do not need to use it in a domain clash. No, they could just use their domain expansion. If somebody learned it who does not have a domain expansion that is powerful, they could use it. But just because you have a domain expansion doesn't mean it's the strongest. I dare say Hanami would probably say that she would go into a domain clash, domain for domain. But at the same time, domain amplification would be advantageous for her if she did go into a domain clash. Now, somebody who did go into a domain clash and still use domain amplification is Sukuna in the Gojo and Sukuna battle. But that's because once you imbue your curse technique into your barrier, that allows your curse technique to function as a separate entity than you. So you don't need to activate the curse technique. It can activate from the barrier, and then you could use domain amplification to penetrate through the curse technique of your opponent, making it that much more of a better anti-domain technique, because now it's defensive and offensive all in the same motion. Like, realistically, your hands are free, your output is 100% the whole time. You don't get your curse technique, but it doesn't matter, because if you're in a domain clash and you play it right, you do get it. You just have to time it correctly. And also, you're absorbing your opponent's curse technique, making it that basically it's just hands being thrown at this point. It's hand-to-hand combat. And if you got hands, you're winning every single time. And of course, I gotta talk about the users being Kenjaku, Jogo, Hanami, Sukuna, and Higuruma at the end of the story. That is my definitive reasoning for why this is the best anti-domain technique. And if you're going to tell me that, oh, we've never seen it used in an actual domain expansion, let me just emphasize what a domain expansion does again. It is using the imbued curse technique in the barrier to attack you with a sure hit. If your domain amplification is absorbing the curse technique once it is touching your domain that is shrouding you, then you will never get hit by the sure hit. And if you do, because of the output difference, well, then either bust out your domain expansion or take a little bit of damage, tank it, and proceed to put belt to ass on your opponent. And that is everything that you need to know about anti-domain techniques. And if you disagree with anything I said, please put it in the comments below. Educate me a little bit, because I love to talk in the comments and discuss some stuff. It gets a little bit hard and a little bit tricky with how much I post, but I do post a lot and I try to keep up with you guys as much as possible. So just let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on anti-domain techniques. Other than that, I hope you have a fantastic day. Please be safe out there, and I will see you in the next video. See ya.